Hi everyone. I guess I'm seeing quite a few people here. Very familiar names though. Hi, how's everyone doing? Feel free to type your comments on the chat bar. Oh, hi Georgia. Hi, Georgie. Good to know you feel good. Hi Jane. I hope everyone started a good day today. Hi Kristen. I'm good too. Yep, I hope today's session goes well. Oh. Hi Georgia. Hi Georgie. Good to know you feel good. Hi Jane. Maybe while waiting for the rest of people to log in, why don't we share with one another where are we from? Yeah, personally, I'm actually from KL. Yeah, you can always just answer by putting in the chat box. Thanks, Jane. I guess probably while waiting for the rest to log in, it's also good for us just to check whether you can hear us clearly so that we can do the technical troubleshooting right now while waiting. Yeah, if you can hear us clearly, just type a comment, please. Oh, Kristen's from KL. Selamat sore damai. Good. KL. Oh, Stephanie's asking how's everybody's lunch just now. Thank you, Achia. Yep. Glad that it's clear today. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yep. Sounds good. Fantastic. Yep. Just in case I get overly excited later hearing from our expert, yeah, feel free to let me know if I speak too loud. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Jasmine from Kajang. Cheers to you too. Thank you, Josephine. Yep. I guess it's almost 3 o'clock. Josephine from Shalam. Okay. I think it's 3 sharp right now. Xiuli, shall we start the session?
Yep, we can start.
Shall?
Yeah.
Hi, Shirley. Okay. Then let's start the session then. Yeah. Dear all, thank you for being on time. So today's topic is really about self-care, and it's a very catchy topic to myself as well when it was proposed to me. Is it really selfish to care for myself? Isn't that a very frequently asked question when we would want to spend time for ourselves, want to do things for ourselves? But I don't know about you, but I do feel guilty at times when I want to take time off just for myself. Yeah, sometimes the thought of having a good wine and dine with friends, wanting to be left alone, caging my kids aside, not having to disturb my thought process, sometimes just wanting to have time to, ladies, just want to groom ourselves. But those thoughts comes and goes so frequently. However, whenever we look at our to-do list, having to cope with our crazy life, busy life, our stressful jobs especially, even being too consumed with technology at times actually took our time away from us. So I'm not sure whether you share the same as I do, but ended up, for me, I always put my me time at the last of my agenda. I'm sure you can relate to that for some of you. So today, we're going to learn a couple of handy tips about how do we live our life happily. So that we learn how to love ourselves more. And today, we also have Xiuli, our guest speaker. She's a certified psychologist, and let's get some tips from her. But before we begin with the slides, of course, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Evelyn. I'm actually the managing director of Eunoia. And I know some of you were trying to scratch head and learn how to pronounce the word Eunoia. You know how our Malaysian style say, Yeah, it's actually the same pronunciation as that. Yeah. In fact, Eunoia is a Greek word. Yeah, correct. A Greek word. Yeah. So today our new language is Greek. Yeah. And with that, Eunoia actually represents a beautiful mind or a normal state of mental health in Greek's term. So that's how we actually pick the word Eunoia, because we find the word very meaningful. And without further ado, let me introduce Xiuli. Hi, Xiuli. Yep. Xiuli basically is a clinical psychologist, and she has been practicing in a private counseling center for as long as 7 years. In fact, she is trained in what we call as cognitive behavior therapy, and she has extra interest in existential and mindfulness-based approach. In fact, I just learned about this from her recently. And she's very well experienced, especially when she has worked on projects that's being funded by various organizations to help people in need. And she has so much of rich experience that we shouldn't let you wait further. Maybe let me just pass the limelight to Xiuli, shall we? There you go, Xiuli. Everybody, before Xiuli speaks, please type "Hi, Xiuli" on your chat box.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Eve, for that warm introduction on my background. So just clarify a little bit, before I actually joined the mental health field as a therapist, I used to work as an administrator in the private counseling center. So that kind of grew my interest in the helping profession, and that's where I am today. So I'm sure everybody came in today wondering, okay, this topic of self-care, what is it about? How can I employ it in my daily life? How can I improve relationships, perhaps? So I'm going to just give us a little bit of context before we get into the whole business of self-care. And if you look now at the slides, you will see two arrows. One is a demand arrow and one is resources. So, in a very broad and simple term, stress is actually defined as the feeling of being overwhelmed when our demands exceed the available resources we have to address them effectively. Now, at this point, I would like to, pose a short question to our audience. In the last few weeks or days, what do you think were some of the demands that you've experienced? For example, maybe demands from your family or work. And what were some of the resources you had that you could use to kind of address these demands? Maybe, Eve, we can have a look at some of the responses from our audience.
Sure. Yeah. Great. So the audience, like Xiuli mentioned, please feel free to type in your answers so that we can share among ourselves. As personally, talking about past 2 weeks demands, I just felt that, for past 2 weeks, I'm highly being wanted. Yeah, being wanted by my kids. Yeah. So, at least the fact of knowing that they need me so badly, I'm pretty happy. I guess within that 2 weeks, I realized that I became their latest edition of toy. Yeah, apparently they treat me like a remote control robot. Yeah, so it's very much a voice recognized kind of new toy. Yeah, so that's how I was coping with the past 2 weeks. What about the rest?
Yeah, I wonder what our audience has to say about their demands, whether it's work or family or maybe a partner, perhaps.
Yeah, true. Partners. Yeah, we can't leave the partners behind. Yeah.
That's true.
I guess everybody is I guess most of the people are working from home, having to cope with a lot of work demand, not only having to manage the family like myself, I have to. Yeah. And I believe a lot of people are trying to also meet the boss's expectation, client's expectation. Yeah. Someone said that, yeah, I never felt more needed by so many people. Isn't that great? Being felt needed by people. Yeah. And Maria, she says she agrees, and she has been demands from her boss, her kids and the boss. I see.
Okay,
Yeah, demand
okay.
from the top. Yeah, Nabila. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I have a lot of bosses to answer to as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like there are
Okay.
quite a few demands that are, being spoken out by everybody. So, okay, now that we know what is stress, maybe I can move on a little further and let's take a look at what happens when there is a lot of stress. So, if you look at this diagram, the effects of stress are not just physical, there are also emotional as well as mental outcomes when we are under stress. So, just some examples quickly from the photo. You can see headache, rapid breathing, high blood pressure. Some of us get stomach ache and indigestion. So, these are very physical symptoms, but you can also have like mental outcomes. For example, you might have a lot of unhelpful negative thoughts. You might feel very emotionally drained and sad and tired. So these are all effects of stress. And at this juncture, for the audience, if you're not able to see the words very clearly, not to worry, because after this webinar, if you head over to our Eunoia website to fill up our feedback form, you can leave your email address with us and we'll make sure that you get the slides. All right? Okay, so let me just move on very quickly now. As we're talking about stress, I think there's a very important concept that I would also like to bring up today, and it's related to the word burnout. Now, when I mention this term burnout, I think some of us must be smiling in the crowd because this is a term that we use quite freely in a lot of organizations and office spaces. So we'll just quickly look at this checklist of what is stress and how is it different from a burnout condition. So if you look at the slides now, stress is characterized by over-engagement. That means what we try to do is we will keep trying to complete the task that is set upon us, trying to keep meeting those demands so that somehow or rather, when this job is done, my stress will go away. So we tend to be more urgent. We are having a lot of energy, thus we become very hyperactive. But because we use up so much energy, we end up becoming very drained after a while. It also causes us to worry. We will worry a lot as we get stressed out. And if you notice, a lot of the damage is physical. So like I mentioned, your headaches, your stomach aches, all those things are physical symptoms. And of course, stress is one of the reasons that people have like chronic heart problems, as well as diabetes and hypertension. So it may kill you prematurely. Now, how is that different from burnout? Now, burnout is a very long, drawn-out process. So this is when months and months of stress that doesn't get addressed, when we can no longer meet the demands, we start becoming detached. We start wanting to move away from that stress. That's why the first characteristic of burnout is disengagement. We just want to detach from it, away from it as much as we can. And because of that, we become very numb to what happens. There's no more worry. We no longer feel guilty about not missing deadlines. We no longer feel scared about the repercussions if we don't meet deadlines. We just become very numb. And it produces this sense of helplessness and hopelessness in ourselves. And we lose our motivation. And after a while, if you notice, the damage here is a bit different. Emotionally, we become very hurt. And it takes a longer time to recover. And this is where some people may even feel like, there's no point in continuing with their lives. And some people may have some suicidal thoughts. So these two are mainly just checklists for us to keep in mind. So every time when we would like to assess where is our stress level, hopefully this checklist can help you. Again, if you can't see the words very clearly, you can refer to the slides later on. Now, Eve, maybe we can just go back to the audience. If they could shout out, how many of you think you are just under stress? And how many of you think that perhaps I'm starting to show signs of burnout? Maybe just shout out stress or burnout. Yeah.
Yes. I like the idea, Xiuli. Yeah, let's check the audiences. How do they feel right now?
Cool.
Yeah, please key into the comment box. Yeah, let's see how many people start detecting that they're getting stressed out, or maybe some is really getting into burnout as well. Yeah, let's check with the audience.
Cool.
But for myself, I probably will find myself stressed. Yeah.
All right.
Remember, highly being demanded by kids. Yeah.
Yes. And there's always that urgency.
Yeah, as well as having to also cope with the incoming calls, the back-to-back con calls. Yeah. Vintage says stress. Okay, stress. Holy thing also say is stress. Okay. I guess quite a number of them are going through stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess, Xiuli, is there any stats to say that, or is there any clear indication that if we detect a colleague who is almost getting the burnout, is there any significant sign that, when you see that, it's like, wow, we better be watchful of him or her. We need to help her, Is there any significant sign?
I suppose if we go by this list that I'm displaying now on the PowerPoint, if you start noticing that your colleagues are becoming more withdrawn, they are really quiet at work. Those are actually quite loud red flags that you should be concerned about, and just maybe ask the person how they are doing. Because with burnout, the tendency is to withdraw, to disengage, to detach from society. So yes, that could be the first red flag, and obviously through your short chat with your colleague, it could help you further understand whether they are indeed showing signs of burnout. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I see. So, the audience, let's pick up the skills of watching out for our colleagues or even, our family members. Yeah, if they are getting slightly detached, just watch for how their reactions are. Yeah, some people suggested that they want spa time. That is a brilliant idea. Yeah, I know spa is so good for managing stress. I need it desperately as well. Yeah, in fact, Maylin said that if MCO extends much longer, then maybe burnout may come. What do you think, Xiuli? Do you think that if MCO were to extend, do you think more people may get into burnout?
Well, I mean, this is still quite an uncertain time, and I don't think I can give a definite yes or no answer to that. But what I can say is definitely to prevent is definitely better than cure. So I would say, rather than worrying about whether or not we get burnt out, how about let's move on to our next topic, which is why everybody's here today, is to learn about self-care and see how we could maybe mitigate some of these stress responses. Shall we?
Sure. That's a good idea.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat box. Eve will help me along the way, and if not, we'll do it at the Q&A later. Okay? All right. So now the big question is, what can I do about it? All right. Now, the concept of self-care is actually something that's very familiar to mankind. In fact, it is part of our genes. We know about self-care. But of course, through the centuries and the years, people have found different ways to define self-care, which is why we don't really have a concrete definition or idea before the 21st century. But with the advancement of scientific studies, as our technology improves, people have started to think about, well, actually self-care can be something with which we can measure and study. And the reason for scientific study is because researchers understand that it's important to develop frameworks so that we can have proper self-care plans to make sure that whatever we do is effective. So if you think about it, self-care as defined by the World Health Organization is that you are able to do behaviors that promote health and well-being, reduce disease, as well as to cope with an illness without always needing a medical professional, like let's say a doctor. So in fact, self-care is encouraged even by the health organization to say that, this is an important thing and therefore we should look at it even more. So now that we've defined what is self-care, the importance of it is definitely number one. When you engage in self-care behavior, it helps you feel re-energized. Remember the earlier slides, we were talking about stress and burnout and how it leaves us very drained. So self-care is like our petrol station, where it fills back the petrol so we can feel energy again. And of course, through self-care, it involves not just, going to the spa. That's only one type of physical self-care. We're also talking about the importance of self-reflection. And it helps because it helps us grow as people. We develop new skills. We think of creative ways to solve problems. So that is why self-care is crucial, especially right now since we're stuck at home most of the days. Yeah? Now, there are many frameworks of self-care. And today I'm going to introduce you one from none other than the International Self-Care Organization. And they've come up with 7 pillars. And if you look at our slide now, it's in different colors. So I will go through each pillar one by one, but this is the snapshot. There are 7. Number 1 is knowledge and health literacy. Pillar number 2 is mental well-being. Pillar number 3 is physical activity. Pillar 4 is about eating. Pillar 5 is about risk avoidance. Pillar 6 is about hygiene. And the last pillar, pillar 7, is about rational use of products and services. So we're going to jump into it now. Now, pillar 1 talks about knowledge and health literacy. So what it really means is we need to be able to get accurate information regarding our health as well as ways to support these healthy behaviors. So these type of information would include like how much sleep do I need, what kind of exercise routines should I be doing, what type of nutrition should I be eating based on my body weight and my, health and lifestyle. Information about how to avoid risky habits and behaviors, hygiene and personal grooming, as well as responsible use of products that we find in the market. In fact, medical and medical services as well. So once we have a good knowledge foundation, that's where we can start with our self-care plan. Now, next of all, I like this one, which is mental well-being. And what it's actually referring to is self-awareness. Now, before we can change something, we first need to be aware. And how we can be aware is by finding out what is our stressor, that's one, and how these stressors are affecting us in our daily life. So today, I am going to recommend you 2 ways how you can find out whether you are stressed or not. Now, the first way is called the subjective measures. So this one is mainly, you're using your own body as the thermometer. So I would encourage my users or, my clients to look for their bodily sensations or physical symptoms. Like if you start noticing there is a lot of aches and pains that you don't know where they come from when you don't really exercise vigorously. So why are you aching so much? Or if you fall sick and for some reason, it takes longer to recover. You recover, it's just that it takes longer. So it could be due to the effects of stress. The other subjective measure that I would say is look at your own regular patterns of behavior. If you start noticing changes like sleep and appetite, it's either increasing or for some reason you're losing sleep or you're losing appetite. These are also very strong indicators that perhaps you're feeling some kind of distress, and it's very important that you go and find out what it is. Now, the next part of the measurement is actually through objective assessments. Now, this is where you finally figure out what in your life is stressing you out. And here, there are actually two types of factors. One is the external stressor, and the other one is internal stressors. Now, to define. Internal stressors are basically experiences or things that are happening inside of us. Now, these things include our thinking, our thought patterns, emotions that we might be having, certain behaviors that we are doing, or even, inside the body, maybe some of our organs are not functioning very well. So these are all the internal experiences that can produce some kind of stress. Whereas external factors that also can bring on stress make up our daily hassles, or you can also call them your daily commitments, for example, your chores, or even just as simple as commuting to work. Those can be seen as hassles. And also major life events. For example, the birth of a new baby can be stressful. The passing of a loved one is also very stressful. It could also be, some people are getting married or separated or related to work. For example, either you're getting a promotion or you have lost your job. So these types are considered external stresses, and we call them as major life events. Now, based on the definitions of these stressors, I have a simple activity here. If you don't have paper, it's fine. You can also jot it on your handphone. Think about some hassles or major life events that have occurred in the last 2 weeks, and what does that say about your stress level? So maybe everybody can take about 30 seconds, just very quickly, write down what could be a hassle or a major life event that is stressing you out. I wonder if Eve, as you're looking at my slide, does anything come to mind?
I guess for the past 2 weeks, I won't say anything major that happened, but I probably will think that having to manage my life, my kids' life, and having to deal with a lot of demands, But at the moment, I guess there's not really major life events, but I have to admit that every time my parents leave the house to get some grocery, I do worry tremendously for them. I'm not too sure if that's considered stress.
Well, that I would say is an internal stress because it's a feeling of worry that you're not sure if your family member is safe. So that would be an internal stressor. But yes, definitely it is a stress. Yes.
I guess another stress that came along the way because of MCO, we don't know how badly it may impact the businesses, having to immediately change our direction of business. But I have to say, maybe we successfully convert stress into motivation or into a different drive. So
maybe that's your frame of mind has changed a bit.
I guess so. Have to somewhat.
True. Okay.
Yes.
I wonder what the audience has to say about this. Has anybody would like to share what could be a hassle for you at the moment? Maybe
Yes.
we can
In
take a
fact,
look.
Anne mentioned
Uh-huh.
about her hassle. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anne shared that the hassles that she's going through is like managing time with kids and
Okay.
then chores in between work. I fully understand you. Yes, correct.
So it looks
Mm-hmm.
like we can't give
And
up the role of being a domestic affairs minister, right?
yes, for this period of time. And also someone say having to cook.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Cooking can be stressful. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I know. And being someone who don't know how to cook, yeah, I'm so worried that I burn down kitchens again. So yeah, that can be tremendously stressful.
Agree. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Any
Mm-hmm.
other
Yep.
sharings that you noticed from the chat box?
Mm-hmm. That's the current sharing from the
Okay.
chat box. But what about you, Xiuli? Yeah, is there any hassle that you're going through the past 2 weeks, and any major life events that you are experiencing?
Same like you, I'm not really having any major life events, but
Mm-hmm.
I do
Mm-hmm.
think at the start of it, I was feeling a bit anxious because,
Oh,
as you mentioned earlier, I'm a clinical psychologist. So, other
yes.
than providing webinars, I also have appointments to do therapy sessions, and I was wondering, a bit worried how I would be able to see my clients for therapy now that we can't do face to face. But with wonders of technology, definitely we have found ways to still keep in communication. And I think that has kind of brought down my internal stressor. As well as for external stressors, very similar to you, I have to deal with chores and all the domestic stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is stressful, but that's why I have some time for self-care. Yeah.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
Sully,
Yeah.
Kristen actually mentioned about insecurity, job
Uh-huh.
stability,
Okay.
pay potentially being cut,
All right.
losing jobs, and how we are going to pay bills. Yeah, I guess that
Mm.
could be quite stressing for a lot of people. And I guess Jamie also mentioned about stress from self isolation, not being able to go out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Justin says, stress from unable to release stress. That's very interesting.
Okay.
Through usual
Okay.
activity, I guess because he mentioned hiking is one of the outdoor
Oh,
activity.
okay.
Yeah, maybe
All
unable
right.
to go outdoor to release stress. Yeah, could be one. Yes, and
Okay.
Rose Sharon mentioned about managing cabin stress. Yeah,
Oh,
cabin
okay.
fever.
Cabin
Yeah,
fever. Okay, which is
cabin
probably
fever.
staying
Yes,
inside as well, right?
correct. Yep.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean,
Correct.
thank you so much for sharing in the audience. So, yeah, some of these examples that you mentioned are actually external stressors. Things like being unable to go outside. That's an external stress. Now, I like the question about what about job security and worries about finances.
Yes.
Actually, a lot of that has an internal component as well as an external component of stress. Internal is because I would say that, when we have a lot of unhelpful thoughts, it does affect how we feel. So the what if questions always pop up. What if the worst case scenario happens? What do I do? And it then leads to a lot of fear and uncertainty. And obviously, that's going to stress us out. Now, along the way, as we discuss further about the self care, one of the things that we mentioned is talking about doing self reflection and learning new skills, because which is still within this pillar two, learning new skills can actually help us to kind of prepare ourselves for, well, I mean, changes in the future. So maybe since that question has popped up, let's just run on with the presentation and so that I can link it back to this question. But before that, I've also got this short exercise. So for those of us who have a lot of things on our plate, one of the self-care tips that I have is actually talking about priorities and reorganizing our task in a day. So if you look at these 4 boxes here, we can actually put our hassles and commitments into these 4 boxes. And it might take a little practice at first, But, as you do more of it, you realize that there are things that, yes, you must do immediately. Otherwise, the thing cannot operate. For example, if you run an office, you have to unlock the door. If not, your workers cannot go inside. So that's something you have to do, right? But there are also things that you can schedule, like if you have 3 different meetings, you would always go for the one that is most urgent first. And then after that, you would go 1, 2, and 3. So things that you can plan and do later. Not that they're not important, it's just that you can do them a bit later. Then you look at the light blue box, things to delegate. There are certain things in our lives that actually doesn't need us to do it personally one. For example, I understand that it's important to find balance in doing chores in the house, and a lot of people fight about who is doing more chores. But think of it this way: if you're having a really hectic day, is it possible just for today you can delegate the vacuuming to somebody else and say, okay, for the next 2 days my schedule's a bit freer, I will do it instead. So things that you can actually give others to do first, and when you have the time, you can replace it back. So things to delegate. And then the last box is actually talking about, well, there are things in life that if we don't do it, it won't cause us any harm, or it doesn't harm our well-being. So, there might be some examples like some people may want to read a magazine, like a fashion magazine. But maybe there are other things that you could do that will give you more emotional benefit that you can do. So maybe you might not want to read a magazine this week and say, I'll do something else. So think about the hassles that you've written down earlier and try to fit them in these boxes and see whether, you can find that, well, some of the tasks can actually be done later or given to others to do first. Yeah, I wonder, Eve, what do you think with these boxes? Does it help you a little with your task?
Oh, in fact, I love your boxes. When you were showing the slides, I noticed that I was trying to, draw my own boxes, and I have a very long list of things that, set in the box of things to do. But I'm glad that you gave me this format, which I can try to prioritize. Yeah, maybe I should strengthen my skills in delegation so I can move at least downwards, reduce my things to do. Maybe I should start delegating. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I wonder if any of the audience has any feedback about this box, whether it helps them or not.
I guess while some of them are still managing, trying to write down their things on the boxes, the 4 quadrant. Maybe let me also bring up some of the comments, shall we?
Okay, sure. Yeah, that would be good.
I guess, Holly basically says that there's no major life events, but in terms of job loss and parents-in-law is something that I believe Holly is trying to deal with. And Alina said that she's also thinking that self-isolation and can't go out can be causing certain stress. Haki mentioned that dealing unstable emotion in the house.
Okay.
That's why Hakim is getting stressed
out. Okay.
But of course, and some of them mentioned about dealing with uncertainty. But of course, Xiuli, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
We have to also share a little bit of our deepest condolences to Sherry, because Sherry mentioned that her mother-in-law passed away end of March. I'm so sorry to hear that, Shirley. Our deepest condolences.
I'm so sorry too.
I'm sure mother-in-law is in very good hands right now. Okay. And of course, looking at uncertainty, people say that they don't know what's going on, going to happen. I guess these are going to cause a lot of stressful things. And now looking at the message box, Anne shared that for the things to do, she actually wrote down it's actually a practice that she wrote down every morning.
Okay. That's great. That's really good practice.
Yes, I admire the practice, and unfortunately, it does always get overwritten by our bosses at home, especially, or even our bosses from the workplace. Almost every day, and their request became the priority. Having to rush for time to finish up the planned stuff that probably should have wrote it down.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing, everybody. I understand that, as we do this exercise, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to surface in our minds, and that's perfectly fine. That's, sometimes we just need this time to express and also get support from our fellow audience with all the things that we are going through. So for those who are, still struggling with your stresses, hang in there. And of course, if you feel like, some days are just too overwhelming, do reach out. There are many mental health providers available now. A lot of us have started digital services. In fact, Eunoia itself, we do provide online therapy services. If you want to find out more, do come and visit us at the Eunoia website to get more information. So I'm going to quickly move on now. I'm mindful of time. Let's go to the next, just a last bit of wrap up. And I think this is where I wanted to emphasize again, despite having a lot of uncertainty at the moment, we can still take very preemptive measures on ourselves. Now, if you have come for our previous webinar on locus of control, we've mentioned that there are lots of things in our environment we cannot control. That's a fact. However, what we can do is take control over our own life. At least if we've done all we could during this time, we won't look back and regret or say, I could have done more. So if you look at my second point, it says that dedicating time for learning and self-reflection is part of self-care as well. Because through self-reflection, this is where you're going to be very honest and look at your own skill sets and determine what it is that you need to increase your competency so that you can continue being on your toes and be tip-top and ready so that when the work finally comes back, you are ready. So it's always being prepared. And I think if we've been to a lot of motivational workshops as well, a lot of life coaches say the same thing. We need to plan. We need to upscale, even without someone telling us to. We need to spend time and discipline to do that. So learning new skills, reflecting on your own journey, these are part of development that you can do and help in your self-care. Now, the last point I wanted to reverse back is that self-care also involves getting enough rest and sleep, mainly because our body is just like an engine. If it runs over time, it breaks down. So when we are sleeping, our cells will rebuild themselves. Our organs have time to process and rest so that they are able to do their functions properly the next day. So the last bit of this mental well-being is about having adequate sleep and rest. Yeah? Now I'm just going to jump on to the next point about self-care, which is physical activity. And I think earlier some of us mentioned that, I can't go outside and that is really stressing me out. So indeed, physical activity is integral. It's important for healthy self-care because it's able to regulate our moods. Definitely, you will feel your endorphins and happy hormones flowing when you have activity. And it also improves our immunity to illnesses and our fitness levels. So I understand that, yes, this is a very trying time. People can't go outside. So I've actually put together some ideas for indoor activities. And I wonder if, as the audience is having a look at some of my ideas, are there some other ways you can work out while you are inside your house? Eve, is there any idea you have that you would like to share, something you're doing now in terms of indoor activity?
Indoor activity wise, yeah, because I believe some of the family have Xbox at home. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can consider playing some dancing game, with the kids. Yeah, at least that is also to enhance the bonding with the kids as well.
I agree.
Or otherwise, you can also have things like maybe because we are gamers. Yeah, we just enjoy playing games. Yeah, so we were doing exercise. In fact, the other day, I noticed that my sister-in-law is doing yoga with the daughter. and they
Oh,
were really enjoying
wow.
it. In fact, they tried out a couple of very challenging moves, and I can hear a lot of laughter from the session. Yeah, firstly, it's healthy, and secondly, when it comes to building bonding with kids, it helps. Yeah.
That is very
Yes.
heartwarming to hear that, parents
Yeah.
are, thinking of ways to engage their kids, and using physical activity is one of them. I wonder, what about the audience? What do you think could be something we could do, while we're stuck at home in terms of activity? Are there any comments or ideas about what else we could do? Okay.
What about you, Xiuli? What would be your indoor activity?
Well, for me, because thankfully I live in a two-story house, so if I need to work up a sweat, I would just run up and down the stairs 100 times. And usually by then
Wow.
my legs will be aching. So yeah, that's why if you notice in one of my tips I said walk up and down the stairs, because I actually do that just to make sure that my fitness level is still there. Because I also like hiking and going outside, but for now I'll
Wow.
just run up and down the stairs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I will adopt your idea then. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually I get my kids to get stuff for me from downstairs, but yeah, maybe I should do the same. Yeah. Bring up the stuff myself. Yeah. Get some training by walking the stairs. Yep. So some of our audience actually says that play Wii, yeah,
Okay.
tennis, dance off, basketball, yeah, Monopoly, yeah, I did that the other day too. I enjoyed it. Try out new recipe,
Okay.
come up with a
Okay.
30 days challenge, board game time.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So actually,
Fantastic. Those are good indoors.
yeah, so looks like our audience is pretty creative when it comes to, finding
Yeah.
physical activity or some kind of activity you
Correct.
can do.
Yes.
And of course, it's important to keep this up, because physical and any kind of indoor activities is a good bonding time, as what Eve had mentioned. This is the time where you're going to get to know your family a bit more. So do enjoy these moments with them. All right, so let's move on to the next pillar, because we're still at pillar number 4 and we've got 7 to cover. So I'm going to just go on.
Sure.
Now, the next pillar in terms of self-care is actually to look after the things that we eat. Because only with the proper nutrients can your body, function properly. And I know that this time it might be difficult for some of us to always go out for groceries, and fresh food may not always be available. Now, that's a fact again. But how can we control certain things is that we can start exploring alternatives with the ingredients that we already have. So like someone mentioned earlier, try new recipes. That is the best way. The internet is like a treasure trove of recipes. You just click Asian dishes, for example, boom, you got like 100 sites teaching you different kinds of dishes. Of course, for some of us who are concerned whether, the portions that I'm taking is suitable, then I would say, why not, consult a dietitian online, or I'm sure there are a lot of those health eating groups that are run by proper professionals. So you can also join those groups and get some kind of consultation. So the idea is pretty much that, you still can have something like a balanced meal or eat healthy. It's just that perhaps you might need to find that extra advice through the digital means. And that's why I put it down here that, why not try either consulting a dietitian or trying out new recipes. Yeah. So that's the pillar on healthy eating. Now, moving on, we are going to look at pillar number 5, and this one is about risk avoidance. Now, probably in some corporates, this is things like, or if you're in the insurance business, it's about like avoiding risk, and it's got something to do with compensation. However, for the interest of self-care today, what I'm proposing is that if we could avoid engaging in excessive, indulgent, or risky behaviors, that way we can actually promote our own mental and physical well-being. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that we can do exercise at home, but I need to stress that the idea is moderate amounts. So when we get too excessive into working out, it actually could have a negative impact on our body. Either, we injure our muscle groups, we lose too much weight, or we just become really fatigued. So to be mindful of doing physical activity in moderate amounts as well. I know Malaysia culture is all about eating. Eating is a way of bonding for Malaysians, right? Mamak, or now that we cannot mama, it will be afternoon tea with our family. Now, while it's not to say that you cannot eat and snack, it's more of being mindful of what we eat during our tea time, and in terms of our meals, are we taking them at regular hours? So that is being not excessive. So that's about eating. Consumption of substances. So some of us may love our coffee. We may drink like 4 or 5 cups a day. So again, the high level of caffeine could have some kind of impact on our systems that we don't have 100% idea of, but definitely there are some. So just to be mindful about the amounts. And if you notice at the bottom, what I mentioned is actually practicing moderation. And as much as possible, just try to avoid behaviors that can be harmful for our body. And that's good self-care already. Yeah, so that's pillar number 5. Now, at this point, I wonder, are there any questions popping out before I move on to pillar number 6? I think we have a bit of
There are
time.
actually some question that they were asking a while ago.
All right, maybe you can pull them out for a bit.
Yeah, sure. In fact, some of them actually says that, if practicing self-care, we practice self-care meaning that we make time for ourselves. But at times people will comment that, this is selfish, this is irresponsible, taking time off for yourself. So how do you actually share with us, teach us, how do we manage that sort of comments from other people?
Okay, so for myself, I liken self-care as something that is important for my well-being. And what I would say is, imagine a runner who is running a marathon. And along the way, through the course, especially for those of us who've gone for marathons, there are actually checkpoints along the way. And, there's a water break for the runners. So if the runner doesn't stop at these dedicated water breaks, they aren't able to continue after a while because they're just so tired and they don't have water in their systems. So naturally, they won't be able to complete and run the full course, right? So my idea is self-care is that water break that we need so that we can continue our journey on forward. So for people who tell me that you are so selfish to do self-care, my usual response to them will be, I'm doing self-care so that I can become a better person for you and for myself. So I'm trying to do things to help myself so that I can be better for you as well, so that I can be better for this relationship with you. And most of the time, after I've explained it in that way, people then realize, oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize that, self-care is not just about myself. I'm doing self-care because I'm trying to preserve my relationship with other people. I'm trying to make sure that, my motivation is up so that I can complete the task that were assigned to me. So in a way, I'm trying to be a better person through self-care. And if I truly believe that's what self-care is about, then you won't feel so guilty about I need that 10 minutes a day, just to do a stretching or yoga exercise, or just leave me alone for 10 minutes to watch my favorite show or something like that. So I wonder if that helps answer the question.
I like the idea how you actually see it from a different point of view. I really appreciate your sharing.
Thank you.
I guess maybe my point of view for that question would be, if we can allocate some time to recharge ourselves to ensure that it also benefit another party, it totally makes sense. Yeah, I support that idea. Maybe when it comes to allocation of time, just have to be slightly more watchful. Not allocate too much time or too long a time that people will start perceiving that we are just taking very long breaks. Yeah,
It's
but
true. It's true.
I guess I really enjoyed the way that you explain it. Yeah. Okay. And then Xiuli,
Okay.
another person actually asked,
Okay.
wouldn't someone who require a me time sometimes will be also be seen as disengaging as well? I guess this is about relating it back to how do we observe people who are going through burnout, that probably they feel disengaged as well. Yeah. So how do we differentiate that? Yeah, from your professional view.
Okay, there's only one way to differentiate it from my professional view, and it's just to
Okay.
ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess
So,
just go direct, just ask, huh?
yeah, it's just about asking. I think it's just taking that extra effort to check in with the person. And if the person says, you know what, I just need to disengage for a while to recharge,
Okay.
all right, then that's fine. And usually when people say that to me, I'll say, great, I hear that you need space. So I'll give you space and I'll come and check in on you maybe after some time, or if you've had enough of your me time, maybe you can come back and check in with me. So you give that opportunity and tell that person that you are always open there. So that even if, I don't check in with you, you've kind of given the ball back to the person and said, I hope you can check back with me as well. Yeah, so that's how I would say that, how I would differentiate between burnout and just needing some quiet time alone. Yeah. Okay.
Good. Very
Okay.
useful tips that you have given. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm just going
Okay.
to try and finish the last two pillars, and then we can
Sure.
spend a bit more time on our questions. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay. So, pillar 6 is about good hygiene. And it's really talking about doing behaviors that can promote physical and emotional well being. Now, of course, for the physical element, what we're talking about is, we do personal grooming, we wash our hands, we take precautions when we are preparing food, how we dispose of our waste. Those are very physical behaviors to make sure that our health is okay. I think for the emotional well-being, when we talk about good hygiene, it's more about, sometimes we need to do grooming just because we want to feel good about ourselves. Although, some people say, for example, I used to have long hair. Now, at some point in time, I really I didn't feel like I looked good anymore. So I went for a haircut and cut it short. So the idea is that after I cut short my hair, I actually felt better. And here I'm not endorsing all the long hair people go cut their hair. It's just that I'm saying that even for long haired people, we need a trim every now and then because maybe our bush is getting too unmanageable and we don't feel good about ourselves. So maybe emotionally we feel, self-esteem a bit low. I look messy. So good hygiene also means that grooming to make ourselves feel better. Or like today, I feel like wearing a hairband because I just feel better, because I think I look nicer and more presentable. So self-care is also about taking care of our physical appearance. And, the examples on the slides are things that we already do on a daily basis. Just wondering, whether anybody else has other examples to think about or not. But these are just for you to, ponder over. Now I'm going to move on to my final slide, okay, so that we can have more time for Q&A.
Sure.
We were talking about rational use of products and services. And what good self-care means is that we are responsible. We, like for example, when we take over-the-counter prescriptions like your Panadol or other types of medicines, it's always important to get correct advice from the professional. Example, your pharmacist, because when we, just self-medicate without proper instructions, it might actually reduce the effectiveness of the medication in the long run for our population. So that's why they always say before you take any kind of medication, you should check in with your pharmacist or your doctor at least. So that's called responsible use of medication. Now, of course, the other part about rational use of services is to use appropriate health and wellness services that are in the market. Now, wellness services, for example, could be the gym. So what is responsible use of the gym? It means that we actually learn how to use the equipment properly, or at least try and get somebody to teach us to use the equipment so that we don't injure ourselves. Because when we injure ourselves, then we will have to go and disturb the doctor to kind of fix our injured shoulder or legs or whatever. So that is called responsible and appropriate use of a wellness service. Or let's say for health services, I'm sure we've gone to a physiotherapist before, some point in our life because of some injury. But if you think about it, nobody actually goes to a physiotherapist for a massage. Oh, today my shoulder is achy. Let's go to a physiotherapist. So responsible use of a health service would mean that you only see a physiotherapist when you have an actual injury, rather than, you just have a sore shoulder and you just need a massage. So that is what self-care is about as well, having that responsibility to know when to use what type of services. And that actually concludes my sharing today in relation to the 7 pillars of self-care. And just before we go into the Q&A, I just wanted to share this final slide with everyone. Just take a look at this quote. I found this very meaningful today when I was preparing for the talk, because I feel at the end of this sharing, what is most important is that we still have hope for tomorrow. And this is what Steve Maraboli had to say about a new day. So let us be open to see opportunities that come. Be wise to be grateful. So be thankful and appreciative of all the things you have now, or even if you don't have. And finally, be courageous to be happy. So, even though times may be trying, we can still find laughter and joy with, people that we love in the things that we do. So I hope that this quote can bring about some kind of hope as we draw close to our webinar today. And with that, now we're going to take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, because I know we have about 2 minutes left. So maybe, Eve, we can just go through 1 or 2. And if we missed out on any of your questions, please visit Eunoia website, drop us your email, and I can reply your email with your questions. All right, so Eve, let's go to that.
Okay. In fact, Xiuli, with your permission, maybe we can extend another 5 minutes to get maybe another couple of questions.
Sure, can.
Yeah. Okay. So I really liked your quote just now. Yeah, it somewhat brought me some internalization, I have to say. Yeah, come, let's look at the question that they have.
All right.
I find this very interesting question. It says that Maylin actually asked, how do we differentiate between burnout and depression? Yeah.
Okay. So depression, I would say, it could be a cause from burnout. So meaning that, when somebody is really burned out, they will start having all these emotions of being helpless and hopeless, and that is actually a characteristic of the depressive condition. So rather than say how to differentiate between burnout and depression, I guess if right off the bat you won't be able to just differentiate it like that, what I would suggest is, if you notice there are people in your environment that seem to have burnout or depressive symptoms and you're not 100% sure, encourage them to reach out to a professional. Either psychiatrists, counselors, clinical psychologists are able to do certain assessments and to do some kind of screening to figure out whether the person is actually going through burnout or depression. So I would say, whatever I've shared today, don't use it as the benchmark. Those are just some preliminary questions you can start asking yourself. But if you at some point are uncertain, reach out to a professional, because that is always the best way. It's the same like a common flu. Some of us may know what a flu looks like. But how do you differentiate, let's say, flu from influenza or something else? In the end, you still have to see a medical doctor, and he still has to do checks on you before he can tell you whether it's flu or influenza. So I'd say the rule of thumb is if you're not 100% sure, encourage the person to reach out. And I think Eunoia has a team of mental health practitioners who can do that. So, after this webinar, perhaps you can also drop us an email if you want to find out more. Yeah, so I hope that answered her question. Yeah.
Thank you, Xiuli. In fact, let me also top out a little bit. Recently, the Eunoia team actually attended a workshop which is called Mental Health First Aider. And being a first aider, we are trained to observe people who are going through depression or even suicidal intent, people who maybe have thoughts of killing themselves, putting themselves, their own life at risk. Yeah. So those are some skills that we can actually pick up. But I totally agree with what Xiuli mentioned. You still need to get a professional to diagnose properly before we can define whether someone is really going through some depression or some more severe condition. Yep. Thank you, Xiuli. Now, moving on, I guess there are questions such as, how much or how frequent is self-care classified as healthy? A few minutes or daily or weekly? Yeah.
I would say this is really a personal thing, and I can't give you a definite answer what is good self-care. But of course, if you started to notice that you are avoiding tasks or you are just not wanting to do it, then I would start to wonder whether that is true self-care or it's just finding an excuse to not do the task. For myself, I would say a dose of self-care a day it's like eating your meals lah. Every day you need nourishment. So self-care gives you nourishment too. You just maybe need a small dose of it every day, 5 to 10 minutes. And that could be your self-care. Yeah. So I won't put like a marker on what is a frequency. It's up to you. All right? Okay.
Sure. I guess it's really personal. I believe all of us probably have to decide, how frequent do we need and how long does it take? And I guess, thanks, Xiuli, I guess you also answered Justine's question about, how to differentiate between self-care and also behavior of avoiding a task. Yeah.
All right.
And yes, in fact, Hakim, personally, I do agree with you. Most of us do practice very well at Pillar 6, which is the good hygiene, especially under the COVID right now. Yeah. I guess at the moment, these are the questions that I have on the list.
All right.
I hope I didn't miss out anyone. But you know what, Xiuli? Going through the list once again, some of them really mentioned very, very interesting things they do indoor, just to make sure that they are still connected with the outside world, such as ordering from mama. I didn't know that it works, but probably I should try it out.
Especially now we've got Grab and all the other delivery services, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, well, I suppose if there aren't any more questions, or if they really are, but you're too shy to ask, you can always write to us and we can reply you. But I do know that it's already past 4 and I don't want to take up any more time. Feel free to contact us, reach out to us. And just a small shout out, next week my colleague is going to be presenting another webinar, same time on Thursday, 3 p.m. So if you're interested, do drop your emails so that we can send you the poster when it's ready. From what I've heard from her short synopsis, it's going to be a really exciting topic. So hopefully all of you can join us. Eve, would you like to add on to that little shout out?
Yes. Please stay tuned. Please come and join us next Thursday, same time at 3 o'clock sharp, and then a very interesting topic by another clinical psychologist. And of course, like Xiuli has mentioned just now, it would be great if you can also drop us a a note saying that you want the slides. And I believe Xiuli will probably add on a little bit more information on the slides before we send it out to you as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And as you can see from the screen, there's a QR code. Please feel free to scan the QR code. We welcome all your feedback so that we can refine our way of doing the webinar. Yeah, so I must thank you in advance for giving us feedback.
Thank you.
And while giving us feedback, please also let us know if you want the notes, and then we will email across it to you. All right. So just in case if you do have any other question that you would like to ask, feel free to let us know, and then I believe Xiuli will come back to you as well.
Okay? Oh yeah, one more thing.
Yes,
if there are other topics that you would love to hear, please do share in your feedback as well, so that we as the presenters can present the stuff that you want to hear. Right, Eve? I think that's not too much to ask as well, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah. So, dear audiences, please feel free to suggest topics that you like to hear. Then because we have been receiving quite a number of suggestions, but we would never stop any suggestions. Please feel free to write to us, let us know, and then we will create that topic for you at the upcoming webinar. Yes.
All right. Okay. All right.
Dear all, please thank Xiuli for sharing so much with us. Yeah, thank you for all the handy tips. I guess it's very important for us to practice self-care, especially. I mean, unfortunately, it took me years to really see the importance of doing it. I hope it's not too late. And of course, looking at ourselves having to cope with all the busy schedule of our personal life, our work life, having to manage kids, bosses, etc. Yep. But most importantly, take care of yourself. Take care of ourselves. It really starts from within. And it's pretty frequent that we forget about doing it. Yeah, until we got reminded. So don't wait until we fall sick or ill. Then only we thought about ourselves. Yeah, sometimes it's not selfish
to care for yourself.
Self-care and love yourself. Exactly.
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Xiuli. Thanks
You're welcome.
for your time.
Thank you everyone for coming. Take care, yeah?
Yes.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.